Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
I'm so pleased to welcome you to our fifth program in our series addressing the 25-year history of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. We're doing these programs to celebrate that 25 years, and that organization has worked with many other organizations and individuals, particularly in the Northwest, to promote human rights. We start our program today with the year 1992. During that year, at the beginning in January, we had the 7th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Children's Program, which we've done for over 20 years, and that was the 7th year on January the 15th. The second thing happened in that year that was very scary for us was in February 1992. On February the 16th, the Bob Matthews Brigade threatened the life of Bill Wasmuth and Marshall Min. And Marshall's here with us today as a member of the Task Force Board. Marshall, how did you learn about this and what was the experience?
At that time, I had my office in my home, and I had the FBI come to my house and told me that I was on a hit list.
A very frightening experience. And you had to take certain security measures.
They told me to check my car before I got in it.
So there's been some risk of this work in past years. Marshall, again with you, we've been invited a lot of places to go to other communities to be helpful or try to be helpful, and when they're trying to combat hate or create organizations. And you and some of us went to Stevens County, Washington, to Colville for a rally in June the 4th, 1992, when the skinheads had moved into that community. What was your experience with that?
My experience there?
Yes.
I remember going up there with Larry Broadbent and yourself and a few other folks, and we spoke that evening, and that was pretty much my experience that evening.
Very large crowd.
Oh, we had a big crowd. We had, that place was packed.
And you, with others, were speaking to how to stand up against hate and what should they do?
To speak up and stand out. When the haters come to town, if you don't say anything, silence gives consent. You need to speak out, and you need to stand up for human rights. And speaking up for the best way to say no to racism and bigotry is by saying yes to human rights is the best way to say no to racism and bigotry, as Bill Wasmuth so eloquently put it.
And you, part of your program when you go to these places, to talk about how they can advertise things too, with billboards or bumper stickers or placards and all. That's been one of your strong points.
Absolutely. Marketing human rights and marketing equality and marketing your community as a community for all people, rather than being an exclusive community that we're open to everybody.
Thank you. Another thing we've done, and some of us in particular have traveled around the United States to deal with speaking to groups, and I had the privilege of going to Asheville, North Carolina, on July the 8th and 9th, 1992, and speaking to those communities. They were having problems with the Klan, and we had a lot of speeches and television interviews and speaking at churches and at the African American Center in Asheville, and that kind of thing is very rewarding for us. Also, in 1992, a man ran for president on the Populist Party named Bo Gritz, and he had connections with the Klan, and we did at a press conference with our college reveal his background on September the 17th, 1992. Norm, I believe you were present at that press conference, and why is that important?
Well, it was important for a variety of reasons, because there was some attraction. He had a lot of personal magnetism, but we had a videotape where he had given what appeared to be a Nazi salute, the straight-arm salute, to a group of skinheads. And in America, if you want to run for president, you better not be doing that, and that's what he did. And that was one of the telling blows to his presidential campaign, and he got nowhere in North Idaho after that.
Or even the whole state.
Yeah.
And I should say this is Norm Gissel, who is a former president and a board member of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, and Marshall Min, I indicated, was also a board member, and he's been there, Marshall, since the beginning. Then Norm will continue with this. Another thing, we have bylaws, and we have protected classes that we work to protect from violence and all, and we had a meeting on December the 8th, 1992, in which we expanded to 3 more groups, in addition to the ones that we had been working with, and that would be the groups of women, the disabled, and the gay lesbian community. Why was that important to do that?
Well, first of all, we had organized initially against the Aryan nations, against the local Nazis, and we were for what they hated. We were for, essentially, and they were segueing into attacks on the gay and lesbian community, and their feelings with respect to women was one of contempt, essentially, and the disabled were a natural part of our concerns. So we decided, as a maturing organization and more sure of ourselves, and having a lot more support in the community as we matured, that we felt it was appropriate to include these groups formally in our bylaws as groups that we were concerned about.
And rallies too they had, and literature they put out, they were very, very anti-gay, and they really indicated the same kind of hatred they had towards people of color.
Yeah.
Then on December the 9th, Marshall, you and Norm and some of us went to Sandpoint, Idaho on December the 9th, and the Bonner County Human Rights Task Force was formed, and Bill Wasmuth was a key speaker. Would you share what that kind of experience was? It's a huge turnout, and they've been active ever since as a very effective organization in their community.
We had a huge turnout. We had also a few racists there. There was America's Promise Church, some members of that organization there, which is a Christian identity church. And then there was Richard Butler was there in the front row. There were some other people from the Aryan nations that were also there.
But they were overwhelmed by the large crowd in support of human rights.
Well, they were overwhelmed, but they were also very vocal. And I know when I spoke, one of the group, and I think it was Richard Butler, said, how can you, because it was sponsored by a Christian organization, sponsored the program, and they wanted to know how a Christian organization could invite a Jew to speak at a Christian organization.
Again, it showed from the hate groups how they had such a contempt for members of the Jewish community.
They had contempt for everybody that's different than them.
Yes, that's the key point of what we learned through that process. Ladies and gentlemen, then we moved to the year 1993, and again, our activities continued. It was the 8th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Children's Program with the Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene School Districts on January the 15th, 1993. Again, very successful, and as all those have been. And then we received a call from an attorney who had a client, said he would give us $5,000 if we could find the perpetrator of a crime against a victim in our community. We never were able to find the perpetrator, but it showed the kind of support the community has to fight crimes by coming forth even with finances to try to end those type of hate crimes. And then Lucy Lipinski is with us. She is on the board of directors of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations for many years. And we had in 1993 a remarkable international conference. We'd worked on that for over 2 years, going back to 1991. Lucy, tell us about this conference, which was held October the 29th through the 31st in 1993.
Well, the thing I remember the best is how long we worked on it to bring it to fruition. And it was well attended, more than 500 people.
It was 900 delegates.
900 delegates.
I was with the registrar on that, and we had 900 people there.
And there were many opportunities to share together and exchange ideas. And there was a banquet Friday night that was very well attended. And we had some special guest speakers there. Can you help me?
Yes, with Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee as a team.
Ruby Dee.
They performed all over the country, and Ozzie did a lot of TV and Ruby Dee movies, and they were the banquet entertainment. We had hundreds of people there.
Turned out to be well worth all the effort that was put into it over a couple of years' time.
And I would just add, Lucy, we had keynote speakers, we had panels, we had workshops. I think we had 65 presenters. And the task force was largely responsible with North Idaho College in putting this on. We had academicians from around the world that we worked with. We started with zero money, and we were successful enough with the delegates and fees and all that when it was over, we had money left, and we had a dinner. If you recall, we had a dinner in which we gave money to the Coeur d'Alene tribe and the Women's Center in Coeur d'Alene and others. And all of that is recorded in the NIC library, audio recording of all of those. So one more thing to you. As a woman who was there, and it's the whole conference on empowering women, how did it impact and affect you?
It was an enriching experience and really helped me to see some of the limitations that I didn't even realize were there. It was a very positive experience for me.
And I remember there was a woman from Asia who'd been in prison, political prison, and she was a great poet, and she spoke with great passion about some countries where there's not a democratic system. And then we had that year the third annual Peace Camp, which has continued on and has been very successful, and we very much appreciate Dr. Peggy Federici, who coordinates that, and she'll be on a later program to talk about it. Then we moved to 1994, and again we start out, as we all do each year, with the Dr. Martin Luther King Children's Program with those schools on January the 14th, and then we had the fourth annual Peace Camp. And so our work continues every year on some projects that we have every year. And Lucy, I'll come back to you. And Joanne Harvey, who's our vice president on our board, will talk later about, in a more detailed way, of something we do every year is have a booth at the North Idaho Fair. You've always worked there. Tell us a little bit about your reaction to the North Idaho Fair.
I think it's one of the best ways for us to reach out to the community and make them aware that we are here as an organization and the things that we have to offer.
What are some of the things we do at the fair with the public?
We do different activities. Every year we do something for the kids. We might make a craft. They might do painting or coloring, make a print of their hand. We've done many things along those lines. We offer videos for adults to view while they're passing by. We have lots of materials to hand out. It's a good opportunity to engage in conversation with those who are of similar mind, and also those who are opposed also come to the table and want to visit.
This year, over 80,000 people visit the fair, and where we're at is by the food and all, and so just the exposure, the awareness that people know that we exist also can result in calls later for assistance and help. Also, 1994 was a big year for the North Idaho College Equality Club, which is associated with the task force, and one of the club members are even on our board. That moves us to the year 1995, and we had our 10th annual Dr. Martin Luther King program on January the 10th, and then we saw some letters to the editor that were quite disturbing about being really derogatory towards part of our people in the community, some of the things that Marshall's talked about. And so Bill Wasmuth, who's now deceased, who was our president at one time back in the 1980s, who then was with the Northwest Coalition Against Malicious Harassment, joined with me, and we did a guest editorial that said in very loud words that there's no tolerance for hatred and bigotry. So we do those kind of editorials, and Norm, you might take a minute to talk about, you've done some guest editorials, and why is that important, and how do we reach the public with those?
Well, you in civil rights, you want to use all of the media. You want to reach everybody you can as often as you can with your messages, and these guest editorials were very powerful at different times. I mean, you could almost sense that there was a need for one of those, and the newspapers almost invariably would run if we requested an opportunity to write a guest editorial. They would accommodate us, and then we would make our points, and we would. There was a lot of benefit to that, and people would organize and coalesce around those ideas to some extent. And
both the Spokesman Review and the Coeur d'Alene Press have been very open to that from time to time on behalf of our organization, and it does cause, it's an educational system, it's an educational form.
Absolutely.
We also, in 1995, had our 5th Peace Camp. It continues to go on. And by the way, we got this idea through Jenny DeLong, who used to be on our board from Baltimore, where there was a Peace Camp. And This year, when we're taping this program in 2005, they're going to have 3 peace camps in 1 year. So it's an ongoing, we have so many ongoing projects, and these are with high school students in both the state of Washington and Idaho. Father Roger LaChance is with us. He is our religious representative on our board of directors, a wonderful man who's pastor at St. Pius X Catholic Church. And among the many duties that you do, Father, is you chair our Victim Support Committee. And there are times when that's not very public because you're working privately with victims. Other times when it is public, when Norm Gissel and brought in Morris Dees and through victims, while we had a civil trial that ended the home of the Aryan nations. But Father Roger, tell us what the victim support's all about and some of your experiences.
Well, basically, whenever hate and harassment happens, we are all victims because we're part of the larger community. But from time to time, men, women, families are put on the spot by either other members of the community or sometimes by their own family because of color, because of faith, because of orientation, whatever the case might be. Many times it'll be a phone call or a letter that will come, and I try to respond to those as chairman as quickly as possible. Try to get the facts as much as we can, and certainly I guess clergy people are known for having a listening ear, which is a good gift. And so it's to listen and to try to discern, all right, what can we do to help these people? Sometimes it's realization that maybe if there's a hatred within the family, maybe advising them the only thing they can do sometimes is to leave town. Other times it's to put them in touch with an attorney. Like Norm. Mm-hmm. And to say, okay, what can we do to protect the rights and the well-being of those persons involved?
So sometimes it's a legal case, like with the Keenan civil matter or criminal matter.
Sometimes it's a well-being case. Sometimes you may have to set up a safe home.
Yes.
And those would be some of the things we would...
And Father, some of the cases where they don't want any publicity publicly, so you work very privately, you follow their wishes.
Yes, absolutely.
And other times we can go public, we can go to the police, we can go to the prosecutor. You've done a remarkable job. And we do have a phone number that we use, and people can call you, and you're the first step in our process.
And it's my parish number, 765-5108.
Let's do that again real quick. It's 765
5108.
5108. And if you're out of the area, of course, that's area code 208.
Area code 208, yes.
Thank you very much. Another thing we did on November the 1st in 1995 is at North Idaho College, where the Human Equality Club is, we decided to raise some money. We did a pie in the face, as you can see here on the screen, and the money was raised, and we raised quite a bit at one of those fun activities, and it was raising money for students at North Idaho College. I think it was kind of the forerunner for later what Lucy's organization would do, that we'll talk about on a different show. And now we have 4 minority scholarships at North Idaho College, but this is kind of a forerunner to that through the other organizations you belong to. Then the last year on the program today is the year 1996. We're covering a lot on this first program here. Again, we always start January. This was the 11th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. program. It was on January the 11th, and again, the Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls school districts involved. Pam Pratt, who's a principal at one of the elementary schools in Coeur d'Alene, coordinates that for us, and she'll be on the show later, and it's remarkable. It's always the 5th grade. We've been doing it for 20. At the time we're talking about this, it was the 11th year that year, but by the time these shows end, it will have been 20 years, and thousands of 5th graders have gone through that program, and they do the program, and teachers work with them from September till January. Also, Lucy, Deanna Gissel, because of illness today, who's our president of the task force, cannot be with us. And what a remarkable woman she is, and she's the spouse of Norm Gissel. And she does an annual event called the Gala event. Tell us all the reasons why we do that. And it's always on Martin Luther King's birthday in January.
Always on Martin Luther King's birthday in January. This is a tremendous effort on Deanna's part. In the early years, she prepared almost all of the food herself in her kitchen for days before. It is the major fundraiser for our organization, the task force, and we use those funds throughout the year for the needs that we have. insurance, etc. And every year the funds seem to be enough to carry us through until the next year. So it's a primary fundraiser. It's a time to get together with all of our members who don't attend the board meetings. They come for our annual meeting, and they'll also come to the gala event, and we get to talk about what's going on and just spend some social time together. It's always a great time.
There's great food,
Great
great socializing, but also Deanne and her crew, which is a big crew. Again, here we bring business in. Business is supportive, and we get auction items. We have both a live and silent auction. So not only do you come and get nice food, and you can buy items, and I know Marshall's deeply involved in that. I know one time he had an item that's worth something like, I think it was $5,000. It went for $600 or $700. So it has all these aspects, and we do recognize the business community. Father Roger, I'd like to come back to you. Another thing this task force does from time to time, and we did in 1996. In January 1996, we had at the Coeur d'Alene Resort the Kootenai County Task Interfaith Christian and Jewish Breakfast, and Rabbi Daniel Fink was with us from Boise. Why is that, and there's a seat on the board for the religious community, why is that so important in our work and our service?
Simply, it's to show that human rights doesn't belong to any specific religious community. It's because we are human. It's of our humanity. It's based on the human nature that God has given us, not on any religious creed. And it's interesting because of how we all come back to the same point, the dignity of the human person.
And by having interfaith and understanding different religions, you create a much more tolerant and accepting.
Absolutely.
And within it's a role model for the citizenry.
Model, right. Mm-hmm.
And you're deeply involved. By the way, Father Roger does a lot of our interfaith prayers at our banquets and all that we'll be talking about later on another program. Also, in February 1996, we joined with the prosecutor of Kootenai County. He led the movement, and we asked for another piece of legislation. On earlier shows, you saw the anti-crime laws we got passed in the 1980s, and he was successful in getting an anti-bomb bill through the legislature. It was kind of a loophole there. It was a federal law against it, but certainly he could act upon it. And it came out of a case where he wasn't able to prosecute because there wasn't a law, and they could only do it at the federal level. And then in July 1996, we had a special luncheon, and part of our proceeds were going to go to help rebuild burned-out black churches in South Carolina, where Morris Dees, of course, was instrumental in that. And we helped that at the Senior Center and had a great turnout about that. Marshall, I believe you were there at that, and would you like to make any comment about why that too was important as an example of reaching out to other communities?
It was making a statement. We didn't care just about ourselves here. We cared about people all over. And human rights is for everybody. It's not just for certain people. And when something happens in another area, we need to be responsive to that too. And we have been responsive. One of the things that we have been doing is helping local task forces start up in different areas. We have the first video that we did about, I think it was 1992, that covered our first 10 years of being a task force, the things we did right, the things we did wrong, the mistakes we made. And we shared that information with people from not only all over the country, but I think we sent one of those videos to somebody in Australia, if I'm not mistaken.
We had over 100 of those went out. It was the first 10 years. It was a documentary, 90-minute documentary. All over the United States. I know went to Japan and some to Canada. And it's been really rewarding to be able to do that. And we tell communities if we've done anything that's helpful, fine. And all communities are different. We learn from them things we haven't done. With that, we have a few minutes left on the program. And at the end of this program, 1996 was the end of the 15th year, or in 1996. We were born in February 1981 at the First Christian Church after some things that happened in 1980. And I'll start with you, Lucy. What's your reaction to as they have up on the screen our cake for our 15th birthday? How do you judge the first 15 years, not thinking about the next 10 that we've had since then?
A lot happened in the first 15 years, and when we started, we were fairly single-focused on the problem of the moment. But as you said earlier, as we matured, more things came in to our view that needed to be addressed, needed to have our attention. There were great challenges, and small successes in the first 15 years.
And some big ones, too.
And
though.
some big ones, too.
Norm Gissel, you're next. And during that 15 years, Order 1 and Order 2 took place. And then there's a story that you had, too, of you through a client, revealed bombings that took place and really solved a case in Spokane for the FBI.
Yeah, that was. But with respect to that, I mean, we have to talk about the fact that there was an attempt on Father Wasmuth's life too during that period of time, and other than a successful attempt on somebody's life, there's nothing more serious than trying to kill somebody because of their beliefs, and that gave us. We survived that, and we became stronger as a result of that. It was exactly the opposite of the intended result of the attempt to kill Bill Wasmuth, and so. That was a perplexing moment for the Nazis because we actually gathered focus and a seriousness of purpose that we may not have had before, and so that was living through those moments sustained us for many, many, many years to this day.
Created a great bond with not only among the board members now, but with the whole community.
Right.
Very crucial. I know Larry Broadbent, he's now deceased, who was an original board member and an undersheriff here, said without the work of the task force and the community, there would have been hundreds of people moved here to join the Aryan Nations that did not. Father, your reaction to those years?
Well, basically I was in southern Idaho. However, I did come up to the tail end of those years, and I succeeded, I'm the second successor to Bill Wasmuth as pastor St. Pius X. And I think the thing that really focused it all was, when we heard the attempt on his life. I live in the house that was bombed right now, and there are still scars of those terrible days. And yet, it was so eloquently said, those days, terrible as they were, began to really coalesce the work of the Kootenai County Task Force.
And it spread out not only through the inland Northwest, but across the Northwest and the country. And we've spoken to many people. In about 10 seconds, Marshall.
10 seconds.
Your reaction.
During that time, that was Order Number 2. I remember the one thing that happened, they had an embankment near my house that they put a swastika, and then there was a sign that says, "Kill Marshall Mend." That was exciting. That was right before they bombed Bill's house.
So you've been through that and you know what it's like. But it shows the courage of this organization and many other people, and say, there's a film out now, a documentary by another group called Not in Our Town. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've really enjoyed our 5th program. We've taken you through the year 1996, and we'll be back next week to continue on that journey. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.